it's one thing reading fiction, but another thing when you're reading something which has sort of an internal logic in it, which holds it together. And this is a question I've often wanted to. I know we talk often, but I've never really asked you this about how close to reality are your books, and I mean, because some people just say they take inspiration, but really some writers in your case, how close is it to reality?
To me, fiction is nothing but an exaggeration of fact. To me, all fiction, when a guy sits and reads a book, if he relates to the happenings in the book, then he likes it a lot more than, if he says, oh, this might happen. So for me, if I take real life instances, for example, I go back to the latest, which is, Background, which is a book before the last one. It's set in the world of academia in the US. It's got real life, it actually borrows from the real life school shooting instances in the US.
Yeah.
And from there on, the story builds. So the moment somebody reads a chapter and says, oh God, this happened, and then they relate to the fact that it actually happened in the US, that's when they start saying, okay, maybe this sort of happened. The Emu scandal, which forms a big part of the story, what a shocking truth down south.
Yes.
So, and today, I bring those stories to people all over the country, and I think it makes my life easier as well.
That Emu story was the way it worked out, in those tiny details, you realize that you have taken it from reality. Which leads you to the next question. Writing on this crime fiction, how much research do you put into it?
I read the newspapers.
And then from there you can
Today, most of the crime, if you pick up any newspaper, the front page is crime, right? Every single day. For example, when Vivek was here sitting up, I was reminded of this Chota Rajan story of how these guys got into the chartered aircraft from Indonesia. Because had they got him by commercial jet, he could have actually pretended to be ill somewhere midway, wherein they would have actually landed the plane midway, and they would have taken him out to a hospital. The party which was accompanying Chota Rajan on the way back would not have been allowed into that country because they didn't have visas. And this guy would have gone to the hospital and escaped from there. So, suddenly that struck me as an interesting episode. So why can't it make its way into a story? So when you read these newspapers, when you come across Indani Mukherjee story, today, if somebody had written an Indani Mukherjee story out of creativity, everybody would have said, what rubbish. How can somebody live with somebody for 15 years and that somebody not know that the other girl was a daughter and not a sister? But if Kalna and things that actually happened, then you wonder. So for me, there is nothing which is better than reading real life crime and adapting it into their stories.
So when you actually decide to sit down and write your crime, because crime fiction does have the basis is usually money, which is a word you're very familiar with. But when you actually sit down, because bestseller she wrote is your first sort of deviation from the norm. When you actually sit down, do you actually decide these are the kind of stories you're going to write, or was this part of the experimentation bestseller she wrote? Because this is more in tandem with your publishing work.
Okay.
More tandem with publishing rather than anything else. Is this?
See, the biggest challenge for me always has been to decide on what to write about. Because once that's fixed, then the story is relatively easy. And I think the longest time in figuring out what's going to be the backdrop of the story. Now, for bestseller she wrote, I was not able to decide for a long time on what I'm going to write about. So suddenly one fine day, I said, okay, I was reminded of an interesting discussion I had in one of the lit fests in Chennai, wherein me, Ashwin Santi, and there was one more author who was on the panel. And he had a very, quasi-active on this debate on whether the book is a product or whether the book is not a product. And it was very nasty debate, by all means. And Piyush was also there at that time.
I was not that author.
You were not the author. So that debate.
I was also the panel. But I also wasn't that author. So who was that? Not me.
So when that debate happened, I decided that I would write a book on authors. So that debate, inspired the first chapter. So without knowing what's going to be there in the book, I wrote the first chapter. And from there on, the book its own course, love affair between India's best-selling author and a young girl, and that's how the story progressed. But I started writing the book with this particular episode in mind, and that's how the story began. So for me, I never had the entire story in mind when I started writing.
So how polished are your first drafts?
Very bad.
Very bad.
Very bad. My first drafts are horrendous. So I have to rewrite multiple times, and sometimes what happens, the first chapters, the first 2-3 chapters are not even the final book. So it happens all the time. But the first draft is bad because, by the time you reach there, there are a lot of loopholes in the plot. So you have to go back and fix them and put in some specific indicators for the public, for the readers to figure out that, okay, this could also have happened. So for me, it takes a lot more effort to finish the book simply because I don't sit and plot my chapters on an Excel worksheet.
Well, it's not necessary. People have different working styles, but in terms of, especially when you're writing fan fiction, it goes through for literary fiction as well, but especially when you're writing fan fiction, you have to leave a trail, of information, which if a reader comes back to the text the second or third time, they can begin to discover it for themselves. So that kind of layering in the thing, do you find that tedious in your writing, or does that come as part of the scenario that you're familiar with?
It becomes very tedious because I don't know the twist which is going to come in the end until I reach the end myself. So once I decide on a twist, I have to go back and plot those specific instances in the book at a later date. So it does not happen when I'm writing the first draft. It only happens when I come back and revisit it.
When you write fan fiction, I'm just curious. I know that you write from a point of familiarity in terms of the research or the banking sector or whatever it is. But do you actually have these manuscripts vetted by other professionals in the field? Like maybe you could ask an investigative officer or a legal person just to get their perspective on the fiction before you write, or you just write it and send it off to the publisher?
No, I don't get it vetted by the legal guys and the investigative guys, of the lawyers, simply because my book does not have a lot of them. My book is more about banking clients, financial services clients, so it's more about banking processes and all, which I'm reasonably familiar with. So for me, that's the easier part. Now, for example, unlike Piyush's book, which largely has a lot of the top story involved, so he needs to have that background. I don't need to have it. Okay, so and two, you might find some errors in terms of the cops and forensics law, more from the cops and the levels of the policemen, etc. But that's very minuscule, so I think you can just ignore it in the case. Also, you're banking on the fact that most of the readers also won't know too much about the hierarchy there. So, and that's not relevant to the story. So, what's relevant to the story is perfect numbers.
The other thing is, I think we've had this conversation before sometime when we were talking about when you wrote the Bitcoin one. And at that time, when you and I had a long chat about this, and it made me wonder how, when you told me that you were writing and I read the book, I said, but Ravi, this is so simple. This is the very basics of Bitcoin, the work that you have done. You haven't talked about fancy footwork and the way, and then the Silk Road and all was about to break. It hadn't broken as yet, but it was just breaking, and the news has started filtering. And today, now they're saying Bitcoins can be used by self-published authors, etc., to as a way of transaction online, and it's going to change the book publishing world this year. But my question is, when you write about these crimes, do you decide that you need to tone it down to a certain level? Because I know you said that you want the reader to get by with certain amount of information.
I don't want the books to sound like a textbook, and that's the risk I run if I actually put too much of technical stuff in the books. And as it is, banking and financial services quite intimidating to people. So if I start putting too much of technology, too much of the process and all that, people will lose interest. So for me, I have to, for lack of a better word, I have to dump it down to a level where it does not, sound frivolous.
Yeah.
And two, it does not, and make sure it's a level where it does not sound too textbookish. So finding the balance is always a challenge. But that's why what I do is I actually get it read by not by the cops and the legal experts, but I get it read by about 10 readers, okay, who I trust, and their feedback then I try and incorporate in the book. So there are bits and pieces that come back with saying, okay, this doesn't look too good, this doesn't sound too good, this sounds too basic. So I then incorporate that feedback into the books.
Okay, now, and this thing, that's interesting because this latest novel that you wrote, the bestseller she wrote, okay, the bestseller she wrote, as we discussed, it's sort of a deviation from your thing. Um, that too, is it again based on reality? Is it going to be based on, because when we live in publishing, we come across stories. So you don't have, as you say, there are gems strewn around. But is this also the point of transition for Ravi Subramanian as a crime writer? Or are you going to try and explore into literary fiction, or are you going to come back to crime in crime writing when you do it?
You said literary fiction, not coming back to crime fiction. Uh,
But because literary fiction would be, which is which would be not necessarily involving crime, but it would be just,
okay, I want to work, kind of explore other genres as well. So I'll probably write books which are set outside the world of crime as well. But I don't intend to giving up this world completely. So if I have 5 books coming out in the next 5 years, all 5 will not be crime thrillers. But we may have 2 or 3 crime thrillers and 2 or 3 of the other kind. So
will you be disappointing your readers by doing that? Or do you think they go with you?
uh, I'm not too sure the readers read you only for the crime thriller bit in your books. I think readers also read you because of the storytelling, because of the pace, because they enjoy reading the entire package. And I don't think I disappoint readers in that sense because a lot of my existing readers are the readers who read the bestseller she wrote. And for those who don't know, bestseller she wrote is a story of 2 authors, and one is India's best-selling author, and the illicit liaison of that best-selling author, and how life goes on for the 2 of them. So it's more in the world of romantic intrigue than crime thriller. Uh, and it's been received equally, as well as my previous book. So I don't think it's disappointed readers at all. If you go on there and look at the reviews are, the number of people who are saying it's good and the number of people are saying it's bad. It's pretty similar to the previous book, so it's not different. So I think it's been received there, and I think people value storytelling. It's not about crime or non-crime. People value the twist. People value the shock you give them. People value, the fact that they stay up all night and they're able to finish a book in 6 hours. Those are important than saying, okay, I read a crime thriller. I think that's where.
Well, that's good because it is known to happen that when writers begin to experiment with styles, they tend to lose a certain amount of readers. So that's fine. But tell me something. I think probably the only author in India so far who's also launched an app for your books. What has been the response to the readers on that app?
Uh,
And how does will it affect your writing style as well in the future?
No, the app at this point in time will not affect my writing style at all. The app is more to reach out to readers on a one-on-one basis. See, the world is moving to mobile. So if you're not on mobile, how do you make sure that people get to know your books? There was a time when people would visit the stores, people would look at the new books which have come out, would wait for reviews, and then read the books. Like that's how it used to be 20 years back. Then it moved to a stage where you have social media coming in, people would be on Facebook, people would be on Twitter, look at your book on Facebook and Twitter, look at kind of jazz you create on social media, and then they would go ahead and buy the book. So books then started becoming like films, where the first 2 weeks of the book launch, after the book launch, became a lot critical as compared to longevity of the book in the past. Now, what's happening now is even social media as a means of promoting your book and reaching out to readers is diminishing. It's become a lot more expensive than what it used to be. So, what is the other option? The other option is clearly to be on your reader's mobile, and that's the reason why I launched this particular app. With this app, if a customer is walking into Crossword, I have the ability to go back and write to him or Oxford. I have the ability to send him a text message saying, "You are in Oxford, have you picked up Ravi Subramanian's latest book?" So it's got that kind of a feature built in. Now, if what is the
So has the response been positive?
the response is reasonably good. I've got a few thousand downloads, not lakhs, a few thousand downloads. But I guess it will only go up from there.
Because all this is part of the experimentation and in writing, and how does it actually work as an author, because there's so many things happening, and there's a question which I'm dying to ask for is that it's not just your writing, the evolution of your writing style. I wanted to know whether the shorter chapters also have been greatly influenced by digital reading.
No. Shorter chapters have been greatly influenced by the need to start making books a lot more pacey. The moment my books started becoming more crime intensive, the need for the books to start reading faster, a lot more pacier was there. And that's the reason why I started writing short chapters.
No, that's interesting. Okay, does anyone have questions for Ravi from the floor?
Ravi, when you become a very successful author, you have a lot of experience, as you said, from the banking. I read the book with God a Banker and so on. So on the one hand, you are attaching God to the banking. On the other hand, there is so much of crime, there is so much of fraud and so on. And when I look at these fraud, I think these are much more serious than killing a person. Because when you do a big fraud, you deprive a lot of people. People commit suicide, they kill each other and so on. So to me, this seems to be a much bigger fraud. Now the question which I want to know is, have you learned it through practice or is it just seeing it from a distance? That means, were you involved in some fraud and had first-hand knowledge, or you just saw it and then started describing it? Pardon my asking you a direct question. Sorry about it.
Okay, couple of things. One, to write a crime thriller, you don't need to be a criminal yourself. And that's a fact. So all these stories are stories which have come from observation, from knowledge, and from reading. And I think now these frauds have been committed by me personally. Maybe after this question, I should start declaring it in the beginning itself of every book, saying now these frauds have been committed by me. And if you look at if God was a banker, just to answer the God bit, the God in the book is actually a guy who's not committed anything wrong in the world of banking. So God stays as God in that particular book. I'm always scared of Piyush just.
I just very simple question about the breaking of genre. You're writing banking thrillers, and then you wrote a romantic thriller. So the breaking of genre. I know you feel satisfied, and I know that you've said that, told me that a few years back also that I want to do this, and in fact I discouraged you from it. But I want to know your real experience. Can you elaborate a little more for other aspiring writers who might want to dabble in other genres?
I think the biggest, it was not easy for me to write this book, simply because of the mental makeup. I've written 7 books which are in the world of banking, which are thrillers, which are had a lot of crime in it, frauds in it. I moved on to write this bestseller she wrote, which was more in the world of romantic intrigue. See, a lot of you may disagree with me, but I personally believe that a crime thriller is plot driven. A book on romance is character driven. And I think that making that shift into the bestseller she wrote was probably the most difficult task for me. Because I was used to writing a book where if the plot was getting a bit, dragged, it was kind of getting a bit boring at a particular point in time, I had the luxury of just killing off someone. I had the luxury of the next chapter being half a page, so and so found it, and then build it into the story going forward. Whereas that luxury was not there in this book because of obvious reasons, because of the plot. And so that was a challenge. And when I started writing it, at times books started to drag. And there were places where I would have long descriptions, so that's why I needed a good editor to edit and bring it down to a reasonable size. So that happened. The second big challenge for me was that convincing the publishers that look, I'm moving genres, but at least I will make sure that the book sells. At least my existing readers will read it. So that was a difficult one. So that happened. And three, the challenge also was to tell readers exactly the point that you made, which is it is not a crime thriller. Because even if it's a good book, if you pick it up as in your mind thinking is a book of one variety and it turns out to be something else, you will still feel disappointed or let down, saying you should have told us that this is this kind of a book. So I went on a communication overdrive to make sure that people got to know that this is not a crime thriller, this is more a book on romantic intrigue. So even the cover, the way the book actually looks, etc., was all to make sure that it's a softer book than that. But the ethos of my writing remains the same. For example, if I leave publishers with something to talk about, leave the readers with something to talk about a particular aspect of the book, for example, Bitcoin or the gun control laws or the diamond mining, etc. In this book, it was the publishing risk. So authors and people who read the book will actually go away a lot more smarter on how a book is written, how a book is made, how publishers react to books, how publishers promote books, etc. So that aspect also remains the same. The other aspect which remains the same is, I believe that the book must end with a dramatic twist. That's when people remember the book. Okay? If you have a good story, a wonderful story, and a dramatic twist at the end, people will remember the book. And building that dramatic twist took me some time because how do you build a dramatic twist in the world of romance, where where it's about relationships? So the twist has to be in the relationships, not in terms of investigation and crime. So that was a bit of a challenge for me as well.
Ravi, perhaps it's a very obvious question, but do the readers at times come back to you, say, pointing out loopholes or plugging holes or pointing out any errors? I'm not suggesting that with your experience, I'm sure very little chances of there being any. But do readers come back and point out that, oh, you probably overlooked this fact or whatever? Sometimes I, as a lawyer, have a tendency to sort of read it from that critic perspective. That perhaps, this is what has happened, that at times when you have an opportunity, you do point it out in good faith, to the author, especially when you know the author. So, have you had any such experience in your career?
I had people coming and pointing out certain loopholes, saying that this could have happened because this happened. Then I go back to them as an explanation. I try to answer all those questions whenever they raise. For example, I don't know how many of you read Ipcot was a banker. In Ipcot was a banker, there's a young banker, he and his secretary make out in the loop. Okay, and that's a true story, by the way. Okay, and this guy's senior, some 100 pages down the line, talks to his wife, and while talking to his wife, mentions this incident. Okay. So, and I have not clarified that in the book at all. Okay, I left it hanging. And I have intentionally left it hanging. So, invariably, once in a week at least, I get a mail saying, by the way, who told him about that glue incident? So people do notice loopholes irrespective of how frivolous they are in a particular chapter. And that's why I make sure that my book and the manuscript is read by multiple people before it actually goes out. Even to the editor to edit, simply because I plug those loopholes in my mind. So it's better to plug those loopholes in advance. And if despite that there is something which is being left hanging, well, you have to live with it. Because the book is anyway out, so you can't do anything about it.
Okay. Well, if anyone has more questions, they can ask Ravi later. Unfortunately, we're running out of time now. But thank you, Ravi, very much for this interesting conversation. And I really look forward to what you're going to experiment with in your next book. And if it's going to be this year or next year.
Maybe with this.
Maybe take up on the conversation we had earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we learned much about what goes into making of an author, especially writing thrillers and having plots and characters and subplots and lines and themes. I would like to remind you that book signings will be taking place outside Chamba. You can go and interact with the authors there. And after this, we of course move on to the next session, which is Pulp and the Popular Consciousness. I would like to call our next panelists onto the stage, Mr. Shaila Brahman and Snehha Punaman. Can we please have you over here? This session is going to give you perspectives on what you would call urban crime and sociological trends that that sort of mark and delineate a city's underbelly, at least an urban city's underbelly. And Shalab, sir, of course, has been an editor at true story magazines like Crime and Detective, Madhur Kathai, and Mahanagar Kahaniyan. Snehha ma'am is widely published in national as well as international publications. I welcome both of you and hand over the stage to you.
Okay, thank you all for joining us. And I promise to be a juicy discussion if nothing. We're here to talk about true crime magazines and what they tell us about modern Indian society. I mean, about its fears, its flaws. We try, as journalists, writers, publishers, in many ways to tell the story of the changing India. And the things that we use are shifts, shifts like value systems, aspirations, lifestyles. But if you really think about it, what we write about is what we see. But what about things that we don't see? I mean, imagine the potential of things that people keep hidden: passions, greed, lust, betrayals, and what they can tell us about our time today. We have with us Shaila Brahman, an icon in the world of true crime publishing. Ravaji has worked with Nai Sari Prakashan for over 30 years now. He edits, among other magazines, 3 true crime titles. They're called Madhur Kathai, I have only 2 of them, so Madhur Kathai, Mahanagar Kahaniyan, I think we've displayed the magazines outside, and Crime and Detective. They may look, very similar on the surface, but they're all meant for different leaderships. So as someone who's been in the field for so long, his perspective on the world of crime in India is deep and unique and telling. And so we're going to talk about the world of crime in India today and what it tells us about the hidden horrors of what Sir himself calls a repressed society. We're dividing the session into 3 sections. In one, we'll talk about the craft of true crime storytelling. We'll also be talking about its role as, in cultural studies, and we'll touch upon the craft of true crime photo fiction. So I'll begin with, great questions. So, can you tell us a little bit about the history of true crime publishing in India, magazines?
Ladies and gentlemen, सबसे पहले मैं क्राइम राइटर फेस्टिवल के आयोजकों और प्रायोजकों का आभार व्यक्त करूंगा कि उन्होंने मुझे यहाँ बोलने का मौका दिया। दूसरा, मैं माफी के साथ कहूँगा कि मैं हिंदी में जवाब दूंगा। हिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्रू क्राइम स्टोरीज, मेरा जहाँ तक अपना निजी विचार है, मैं इसको महाभारत और रामायण से देखता हूँ कि वो जो महान ग्रंथ थे उनमें जीवन की हर अच्छाई हर बुराई का चित्रण है। उससे बड़ी क्यों कुछ नहीं हो सकता। वो आज भी हमारे समाज में उतनी रेलिवेंट हैं, हर तरह की कहानियां में मौजूद हैं और हर तरह आज जो चीजें होती हैं कोई किससे प्रेरणा ले तो वहाँ की महाभारत या रामायण से लेता है। वो हर साल एक नया धारावाहिक उन पर बनता है, नई फिल्में बनती हैं, हजारों साल हो गए, लेकिन वो कहानी जो है कभी खत्म नहीं होती। वो लोगों को उसका इंटरेस्ट है बना। तो ये
तो ये ट्रू क्राइम की कहानी किस्सा गोई जो है ये वहाँ से शुरू होती है। और जहाँ तक मैगजीन्स की बात है तो ये ट्रू क्राइम स्टोरी 1972 सबसे पहले मनोहर कहानियाँ स्टार हुई थी मित्रा प्रकाशन वालों की आवाज से। और वो एक टाइम ये था कि आज कोई बिलीव नहीं कर सकता कि कोई मैगजीन 4.5 लाख बिकती हो। तो मनोहर कहानियाँ ने वो सारे रिकॉर्ड बनाए थे उस टाइम पर 75-80 के दौर में। उसकी कुछ वजह थी क्योंकि उस टाइम जो पाठक के लिए एक नई चीज थी क्राइम को आगे लाने के लिए। उनके पास एक स्पेशल राइटर थे श्रीकांत सिंह का। उनकी जो लेखन शैली थी वो बहुत छोटे छोटे संवादों में कहानियां लिखी, पुलिस की तफ्तीश, इंट्रोगेशन और किसी अपराधी के जेहल में झांकना, उसका मनोविज्ञान पढ़ने की कला उनको इतनी अच्छी आती थी कि वो उनके अलग रीडरशिप बने। उसके बाद जो मनोहर कहानियां में कुछ उर्दू कहानियों का बहुत बड़ा योगदान है। उर्दू कहानियां ट्रांसलेट करके वो उससे छापते रहे। और उर्दू में किस्सा गोई बहुत अच्छी होती है, उर्दू के राइटर ज्यादा अच्छी तरह से किस्सा गोई करते हैं। तो दूसरा थोड़ा लैंग्वेज का भी है कि उर्दू लैंग्वेज में कुछ शब्द ऐसे हैं कि एक शब्द पूरा वाक्य को कह जाता है, वो भी था। फिर तीसरी बात ये थी कि उस टाइम एक जनरेशन जो थी वो उर्दू को जानती थी और जो उसमें जो पंजाबी भाषा की जो महक थी वो इंडिया के पंजाब और पाकिस्तान के पंजाब तो दोनों लोग उसको पसंद करते थे, इसलिए मनोहर कहानियां सबसे ज्यादा पंजाब में लगती थी। उसके बाद सत्य कथा मैगजीन आई। आज ट्रेन में हर आदमी फोन लेके बैठा रहता था, उस टाइम सत्य कथा लेके लोग ट्रेन में सफर काटते थे, आज उतना नहीं है। उसके बाद फिर नूतन कहानियां आई, उनकी 2 मैगजीन आई, तुलसी पॉकेट बुक्स मेरठ वालों की शर्मा उन्होंने तुलसी कहानी निकाली। मनोहर कलियां निकली, जो मनोहर कहानियां के एजेंट थे दिल्ली के सबसे बड़े, जो 75,000 मनोहर कहानियां बेचते थे, उन्होंने एक मनोहर कलियां निकाली। उसके बाद नई सदी प्रकाशन ने 1984 में मधुर कथाएं निकाली। मधुर कथाएं इन सब मैगजीन से थोड़ा सा अलग था क्योंकि उसमें सिर्फ स्टोरी, एक क्राइम स्टोरी नहीं थी, उसमें कुछ और फीचर्स ऐड किए। एक छोटी उसमें हमने बुकलेट देनी शुरू की जो थोड़ा सा स्टोरी से हट के होता था। उससे ज्योतिष को होता था, अबनॉर्मल से बिहेवियर को होता था, फॉरेंसिक साइंस पर इंफॉर्मेशन होती थी। हमने रीडर्स के कॉलम उसमें इंट्रोड्यूस किए, लीगल कॉलम इंट्रोड्यूस किए। और जो रूरल एरिया है वहाँ पे छोटे छोटे शहरों के जो छोटे छोटे केसेस हैं उनका एक बंच बनाया, उसको एक अलग सेक्शन दिया। तो मधुर कथाएं से रीडर्स में बहुत ज्यादा पॉपुलर हो गई। और एक टाइम ये आया कि जब मनोहर कहानियां खत्म सी होने लगी तो उस टाइम मधुर कथाएं सबसे ऊपर चली गई और उसकी कॉस्ट भी सबसे ज्यादा थी। और 90 और 2000 के बीच में मधुर कथाएं सबसे हिट, यूथ की सबसे फेवरेट मैगजीन बन गई। तभी हमने फोटो स्टोरी क्राइम को कहने के लिए विजुअल में हमने उसको स्टोरी में जैसे सीरियल धारावाहिक बनते हैं विजुअल में हमने उसको स्टिल में प्रेजेंट करना शुरू किया। तो वो आइडिया हमारा बड़ा हिट रहा। एक टाइम यह आया कि हमारी जो मधुर कथाएं है उसके नाम से ही मार्केट में 10 मैगजीन आ गई। उस टाइम एक बाढ़ सी आ गई, ट्रू क्राइम स्टोरी की मैगजीन 30 मैगजीन उस टाइम मार्केट में थे। उसी टाइम हमने क्राइम एंड डिटेक्टिव स्टार्ट किया 90 में, जो इंडिया में अकेला मैगजीन है इंग्लिश में ट्रू क्राइम स्टोरीज का। और 2001 में हमने महानगर कहानियां स्टार्ट किया। वो थोड़ा सा दोनों का कैरेक्टर अलग है, एक आर्ट मूवी है, एक मसाला मूवी है। तो ये तो हिस्ट्री है थोड़ा सा। उसके बाद
आज सत्य कथाओं का रीडर कौन है? आप रीडरशिप को कैसे डिफाइन करेंगे?
सत्य कथाओं का रीडर देखिए, सत्य कथाएं कभी खत्म नहीं होती। ये तो रीडर, ये क्राइम एक ऐसी चीज है, मैं ये कहता हूँ कि हर आदमी के मस्तिष्क में डार्क साइड होती है, अंधेरा पक्ष होता है, उसमें कुछ उन्माद जिन्हें आप कह सकते हैं उसके बीज होते हैं। तो मुझे हालात ऐसे मिलती है, उसको कोई खाद मिलती है, तो वहां से क्राइम की सृजना होती है, क्राइम होता है। हर आदमी जो विवेक जिसके अंदर विवेक है वो उसको कंट्रोल कर लेता है। तो हर आदमी के जीवन में ऐसे चांस आते हैं, ऐसे हालात आते हैं कि वो एक बार सोचता है कि मैं ऐसा कर दूं, मैं क्राइम कर दूं, नेगेटिव होता है। लेकिन जो ज्यादातर लोग हैं जो अपने आप को कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं तो वो कर लेते हैं। तो इसलिए क्राइम स्टोरी जो है ना, उसको पढ़ने का जो वो है, वो हर आदमी के ध्यान में होता है कि वो जानना चाहता है कि ये क्राइम कैसे हुआ, क्यों हुआ, क्योंकि वो बहुत सारी चीजें अपने आप से जो होता है। तो हमारे रीडरशिप की बात है तो हमारा जो ज्यादातर जो रीडर है वो छोटे कस्बों का है, छोटे शहर का है, क्योंकि उसके पास एंटरटेनमेंट के दूसरे साधन नहीं है। आज तो चलो फोन पर सारा कुछ नेट भी आ गया है, ये भी हो गया, बहुत सारी चीजें होगी, लेकिन अभी भी वहाँ एक तो पावर की प्रॉब्लम है, दूसरा वो अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते। इसलिए उनके लिए जो टाइम पास का जो जरिया है वो ये मैगजीन है, ये कहानी है। वो इसको पढ़ते ही तो दुनिया को जानते हैं कहाँ क्या होगा, क्योंकि वो टीवी भी और टीवी से भी देख सकते हैं कि वहाँ पावर नहीं होती है। तो जो हमारा जो ज्यादातर रीडर है वो कस्बों, छोटे शहरों में कस्बों का, मेट्रो का भी है, लेकिन ज्यादातर रीडर वहाँ का है।
जैसे आपने बताया मुझे एक बार ऐसी जगहों में रीडर्स से सत्य कथाओं के जहाँ पे कनेक्टिविटी नहीं है, जहाँ पे ट्रेन नहीं जाती, बसेस नहीं जाती, तो वहाँ पे लोग किलोमीटर्स तक चल के नियरेस्ट रेलवे स्टेशन पे आते हैं क्योंकि प्लेटफॉर्म पे कॉपी पहुँच जाती है। तो ऐसी जगहों में अभी भी गेम क्राइम्स ऑल्सो एंटरटेनमेंट है। तो क्राफ्ट की बात अगर करते हैं सभी कथाओं की, तो आपको लगता है कि बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक्स क्या हैं ट्रू क्राइम स्टोरी टेलिंग की? आप यू नो व्हाट्स अ गुड ट्रू क्राइम स्टोरी, क्या एलिमेंट्स होने चाहिए एक सभी कथा में?
मेरा ये पर्सनली मानना है कि कोई भी स्टोरी, एक ट्रू क्राइम स्टोरी को अगर एक फिक्शन के द्वारा लिखा जाए तो बहुत ज्यादा अट्रैक्टिव होता है, और आप किसी फिक्शन को ट्रू क्राइम के द्वारा लिखें तो वो भी बहुत ज्यादा अट्रैक्टिव है। बेसिक जो सिद्धांत है, मैं मानता हूँ कि मैं प्रेमचंद को सबसे बड़ा वो कहानीकार मानता हूँ, क्योंकि उनकी जो कहानियां जो पॉपुलर साहित्य पॉपुलर है उसकी वजह ये थी कि उन्होंने अपनी कहानियों को सत्य कथा की तरह लिखा। उन्होंने सोसाइटी से पात्र को उठाया, सोसाइटी की जो बुराइयां हैं, जो रूढ़ियां हैं, अंधविश्वास हैं, अच्छाइयां हैं, उनको उसमें भिगोया, उसके बाद उन्होंने उसको प्रेजेंट किया। प्रेजेंट इस तरह से किया कि लगे कि वो कहानी, आप कहानी के साथ साथ चल रहे हैं, आप वो दृश्य देख रहे हैं जो वो लिख रहे हैं। तो वो जब आदमी के अंदर की भावनाएं कहानी पढ़ते हुए प्रेरित हो जाए, वो पात्र के दुख में अपने आप को शामिल कर दीजिए, और जहाँ पर अन्याय हो रहा है वहां पर उससे गुस्सा आने लगे, तो वो सत्य कथा हो जाए, क्योंकि वो आपसे अटैच होगी, आपके साथ मिक्स होगी। तो प्रेमचंद्र की जो सफलता है उसकी सबसे बड़ी वजह यही है कि उन्होंने जो पात्र जो सृजित किए वो आज भी हमारे दोस्त में भी लगते हैं, लेकिन वो आज भी उनके पात्रों के नाम बहुत सारे लोगों को याद होंगे। चाहे आपने 30 साल पहले कहानी पढ़ी हो, इवन उन्होंने जो एक कहानी है दो बैलों की कथा, हीरा मोती दो बैल है, उनका किस तरह से मानवीकरण किया, उनकी जो भावनाओं को उनको चित्रण किया, वो नाम भी लोगों को याद है। तो कोई ईदगाह के आमिर ले लीजिए, कफन कहानी ले लीजिए, मंत्र ले लीजिए, तो वो है कहानी कहने का क्राफ्ट स्टाइल। हमारे सत्य कथा में जो बाउंड्री होती है इसके 3 पार्ट है। एक तो हम स्टार्ट में आते हैं कि ये जो पात्र है उनका परिचय, उनका फैमिली बैकग्राउंड और बाकी सारी चीजें। उसके बाद हम आते हैं सेकेंड पार्ट में कि क्राइम कब हुआ, क्यों हुआ, कैसे हुआ, मतलब ये सेकेंड पार्ट में आ गया। उसके बाद पुलिस का रोल आता है, पुलिस की तफ्तीश शुरू होती है। अगर सिंपल क्राइम है तो उसमें ज्यादा कुछ गुंजाइश होती है, अगर वो ब्लाइंड मर्डर है या कुछ इस तरह से उलझा हुआ है तो उसमें भी पुलिस की तफ्तीश से हम उसको कहानी को आगे बढ़ाते हैं। लास्ट में उसका एक एंड होता है कि पकड़ा जाता है, जिसने भी क्रिमिनल पकड़ा जाता है। ये तो एक खांचा, सिंपल सा खांचा है। अब इसमें क्या है कि जो अब कहानी को आज क्या है कि आज विजुअल मीडिया इतना हावी हो गया है, टीवी अखबार भी 2-2 पेज क्राइम स्टोरी कर देते हैं, अगले दिन उसका फॉलो अप करते हैं, पाठक उसको सब कुछ जान चुका होता है। टीवी उस पर रोज दिखाता है, एक एक चीज दिखाता है, हर का प्रोग्राम बनाता है। उसके बाद जो हमारी चुनौती है कि हम उस कहानी को पाठक को कैसे पढ़ाएं। तो पाठक को उसका आगे अंत पता है, उसके बाद भी वो कहानी पढ़ता है तो वो कहानी बुननी पड़ती है, उसमें सस्पेंस डालने पड़ते हैं। 1 सस्पेंस, 2 सस्पेंस, 3 सस्पेंस, 3 सस्पेक्ट। पाठक को लगेगी ये सस्पेक्ट इसने नहीं किया, पुलिस ने पकड़ लिया, इसने नहीं किया, दूसरे ने किया, उसको कहानी का अंत पता है। उसके बाद में हम कहानी का जो खाना पाना इस तरह से बुन के उसको प्रेजेंट करते हैं कि वो पूरी कहानी को एंजॉय करता है। उसके बाद अंत में जो क्राइम जिसने किया उसका कैरेक्टर आता है, और अंत में वही जैसे हमारी फिल्मों में भी होता है कि कितना भी बड़ा चालाक मुजरिम हो वो कानून के हाथ में आ जाता है।
और जो क्रिमिनल के दिमाग में जाने की जो प्रोसेस है, जो साइको एनालिसिस करते हैं, आप उसका क्या रोल है?
हाँ, मैं वही बता रहा था, जैसे मैं बता रहा था कि हमारी कहानी कोई क्यों पढ़ेगी, जब आपको सब कुछ पहले ही पता है, तो हम उसमें कुछ ऐसे एलिमेंट लेते हैं जो अखबार या टीवी में छोड़ दिए, हम उसमें सीन कर लेते हैं। कोई क्राइम उसने प्लान किया तो कैसे किया, उसको एग्जीक्यूट किया तो कैसे किया, किसी को चीट किया तो कैसे किया, उसे क्या उससे बोला होगा, वो डिपेंड करता है कि पाप से किस परिवेश से आ रहा है। उसी तरह की हम उसको लैंग्वेज देते हैं, उसी तरह की सोच रखते हैं, उसको हम चित्र बनाते हैं। उसको चित्र ये होता है कि पाठक उस कहानी को पढ़ते तो उसके सामने एक चित्र उपस्थित हो जाए, वो हम सजेस्ट करते हैं। तो वो पार्ट होता है कि हम तो उसमें थोड़ा सा कल्पनाशीलता होती है, क्योंकि हमारे पास एक लिमिटेशन है फैक्ट, हम फैक्ट को लोड नहीं सकते, लेकिन उसमें हम अपनी तरफ से सीन बनाते हैं। क्राइम की प्लानिंग इस तरह से हुई होगी, चीटिंग इस तरह से होगी, इसलिए जिसको अपने जाल में फंसाया चीटिंग के लिए मोहब्बत में कैसे भी इस तरह से किया होगा, फिर इस तरह से एग्जीक्यूट किया होगा, फिर इस तरह से वो पकड़ा गया।
Scene setting, there's dialogue, there's always a climax. तो अगर क्राइम्स की ही बात करें तो आज और हर जमाने का अपना ट्रेंड होता है क्राइम में, और तो आज के जमाने का क्या ट्रेंड है, क्या ब्रॉड कैटेगरीज क्या है आज क्राइम में?
क्राइम में ट्रेंड्स देखो हमेशा बदलते रहते हैं, लेकिन वो सब बेसिक नहीं होता, ठीक है। ट्रेंड्स बदलते हैं जैसे जैसे सुविधा आगे बढ़ती है, टेक्नोलॉजी आगे बढ़ती है, तो उसी तरह से क्राइम के तरीके थोड़ा सा बदल जाते हैं। जो बेसिक है, बेसिक नहीं पता, बेसिक यहाँ है, नेचर में है, वो तब बदलेगा जब हम सोसाइटी को उस लायक बना लेंगे, उसको इम्प्रूव करके आदमी की सोच को डेवलप कर लेंगे। अब अभी जो नई टेक्नोलॉजी है इस हिसाब से उसमें क्राइम के ट्रेंड्स बदल रहे हैं। अब मैट्रिमोनियल साइट्स पर बहुत सारे फ्रॉड हो रहे हैं, फेसबुक पर बहुत सारे फ्रॉड हो रहे हैं, व्हाट्सएप पर हो रहे हैं, जो भी सोशल वो है उसमें बहुत सारे फ्रॉड हो रहे हैं। मतलब फ्रॉड हो गए, आप सामने वाला जो आपको चीट कर रहा है उसको देखते भी नहीं है, आप उसके अकाउंट में पैसे भी डाल दे रहे हैं, आप ठगे भी जा रहे हैं। तो ये अब उस टेक्नोलॉजी ने उनका काम बहुत आसान कर दिया, लेकिन उसी टेक्नोलॉजी से वो भरे भी जाते हैं, दोनों चीजें। तो ट्रेंड क्या होता है, दूसरी बात है कि दो तरह की चीजें हैं, एक है लोअर मिडिल क्लास, मिडिल क्लास, एक है अपर क्लास। अपर क्लास में कोई क्राइम होता है तो लोअर मिडिल क्लास उसको थोड़ा सा वहां रिवेंज की भावना आ जाती है, वो उसको मजे लेकर पड़ता है, उसको लगता है कि अच्छा ये तो पढ़े लिखे थे, इन्होंने भी हमारे साथ काम कर दिया, ठीक है। तो वो जो क्राइम होता है वो ज्यादा हाईलाइट होता है, अखबारों में भी होता है, टीवी में भी होता है, क्योंकि उसकी लीडरशिप ज्यादा है। जो लोअर मिडिल क्लास वाला है उसको यकीन नहीं होता है कि ये लोग भी ऐसा करते हैं, तो वो क्राइम ज्यादा हाईलाइट होता है।
सतीश साहब, सेक्स का एक बहुत बड़ा रोल होता है सतीश साहब को बोलने में, इसके बारे में आप बात करना चाहेंगे?
क्राइम की जितनी भी घटनाएं होती हैं, 80% क्राइम जो होता है वो सेक्स की वजह से ही होता है, चाहे वो उसमें डायरेक्टली इन्वॉल्व हो या इनडायरेक्टली। पिछले कुछ टाइम में हनी ट्रैप की बहुत सारे केसेस, ब्लैकमेलिंग के बहुत सारे केसेस, और जो आपस में जो नजदीकी रिश्ते हैं उनमें बहुत सारे मर्डर हो रहे हैं। पोता दादी को मार रहा है, माँ को मार रहा, बाप बेटा बाप की सुपारी दे रहा, इसके पीछे भी वही है, एक गर्लफ्रेंड के लिए कर रहा है या के लिए कर रहा है, पैसे के लिए कर रहा है। और लिव इन रिलेशन में खूब सारे क्राइम होते हैं। तो और जो डायरेक्ट सेक्स है, जो फ्लैशडेड है या जो दूसरी तरह के से जुड़े हुए क्राइम होते हैं, उसमें तो है ही, पार्ट तो है ही। और जो अवैध संबंधों की सबसे ज्यादा जो हमारे पास जो रूरल से आते हैं केसेस, वो उस तरह की कहानियां जो उसमें तो सेक्स इन्वॉल्व है ही, जो इस तरह के संबंध बनते हैं उसमें ज्यादा उनका जो अंजाम होता है उसमें मर्डर ही होता है। अगर लेडी मरेगी या फिर उसका प्रेमी मरेगा। और कभी भी उसमें ये होता है कि बच्चे भी चले जाते हैं जो निर्दोष होते हैं। तो उसमें क्या है कि वो उसको मैं थोड़ा सा एक दो चीज कहना चाहूँगा। जो इस तरह के क्राइम होते हैं, तो हमारे पास इस तरह के बहुत सारे मैक्सिमम कहानियाँ आती हैं। अभी एक बेंगलोर में केस हुआ था जिसमें लेडी है, उसके दो बच्चों का मर्डर उसके प्रेमी ने कर दिया था। तो कॉलेज में पढ़ता था वो लेडी, 35 साल की मैरिड लेडी थी, हाउस वाइफ थी। तो इसमें दो पार्ट हैं। एक में तो क्या होता है कि लड़का जुनूनी हो जाता है, उसके प्रति वो उससे शादी करना चाहता है। लेडी की अपनी फाउंडेशन होती है, वो एक लिमिट तक तो ठीक है, उसको लिबर्टी दे सकती है, उसके बाद वो उसको अवॉइड करना शुरू कर देती है। वहाँ उसके जेल में पैदा होता है कि इसने मुझसे वेरीफाई की, तो वहाँ कायम होता है। एक ये होता है कि जैसे मैं एक चीज जो मैंने अपने ऑब्जर्वेशन से, जो मैंने अपने 25-30 साल के अध्ययन से जो हमारे पास कहानियां आती हैं उनके माध्यम से मैंने निकाला कि हमारे समाज में जो एक हाउस वाइफ, एक सामान्य बढ़ती नारी है, वो 35 के एज में सबसे ज्यादा अकेली हो जाती है। उसकी वजह होती है जब उसकी शादी होती है तब वो एक अनजान परिवार में जाके, अनजान समाज में जाती है, उसको वहाँ खुलते खुलते 2 साल लग जाते हैं अपने आप को व्यक्त करने में। इन बिटवीन वो बच्चों की मां बन जाती है, फिर वो 4-5-6 साल बच्चों की परवरिश में चले जाते हैं, बच्चे बड़े हो जाते हैं स्कूल। जब बच्चे समझदार हो जाते हैं तो बच्चों की अपनी अलग दुनिया हो जाती है, वो अपने लैपटॉप पर, अपने फोन पर, अपने फ्रेंड सर्कल में चले जाते हैं। माँ उन्हें प्यार भी करती है, तो क्या करती है ये सब, तो माँ वहाँ अलग हो जाती है। हस्बैंड की वो बहुत बिजी हो जाता है, तो उसके बच्चों का कैरियर देखना है, पैसा कमाना है। और एक फैक्टर उसमें ये भी आता है कि वो थोड़ा सा बोर भी हो चुका होता है, उसके जीवन में हो सकता है कुछ लोगों के जीवन में कोई और भी आ चुका होता है, तो वो भी अपनी बीवी को अवॉइड करना शुरू कर देता है। तो वो 35 की जो एज है वहाँ बिल्कुल अकेली हो जाती है। अगर उसके पास वो कहीं अपने आप को बिजी नहीं करती है, या वो नेट चलाना नहीं जानती है, दूसरी चीजें नहीं जानती है, तो वो वहाँ एकदम अपने आप को तनहा फील करते हैं। तो उस टाइम पर उसके बैठने के सबसे ज्यादा चांसेस होते हैं। अगर कोई यंग लड़का उस टाइम उसके जीवन में आ जाता है जो उसकी प्रशंसा करे, जो उसको थोड़ा सा इस तरह से करे, तो वहां पर वो फिसल जाती है। अब वहां पर एक बार अगर फिसली, पाप और पुण्य का वो सब चीजें गई, तो उसके बाद भी वहां फिर क्राइम की सूचना होती है। उसमें क्या होता है, किसी ने देख लिया तो मर्डर होगा, बच्चे अननेसेसरी मारे जाएंगे, सास ससुर मारे जाएंगे। तो ये तो हमारे समाज में, क्योंकि हिडन है हमारे समाज में, जो सेक्स है वो इतना हिडन है, इसमें इतना दुराव छुपाव है, और क्यूरियोसिटी इतने, भ्रम इतने हैं जेल में, तो वो जो चीजें हैं वो क्राइम का बहुत बड़ा कारण बनता है, वो जो मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग।
30 साल के करियर में आपने हजारों जानते हैं, हजारों क्राइम स्टोरीज पे काम किया है, देखा है, सुना है। ऐसी जरूर कुछ स्टोरीज होगी जो आपके दिमाग में अभी तक रह गई हैं।
बहुत सारी कहानियां। मैं तो एक महीने में 50 कहानियां पढ़ता हूँ, एक लड़कों लिखता हूँ, और वो कुछ तो बिल्कुल गड़बड़ हो गई। लेकिन कुछ केस ऐसे होते हैं जिनका आप यकीन नहीं कर सकते, हमारे सोसाइटी में ऐसा भी हो सकता है। बहुत सारे केस जेल में हैं जो बिल्कुल है, तो विचित्र केस की बात है। एक केस में बता दो, एक लड़की है जो जिसको विदेश जाने का बड़ा शौक है, रिटायर्ड कैप्टन की बेटी थी, पढ़ी लिखी MBA थी। उसका एक रिश्ता हुआ एक फैमिली में। वो लड़का भी उन्होंने बताया था कि MBA ऑस्ट्रेलिया में नौकरी करता है। जब बारात गई तो उसमें 2 दूल्हे गए, एक तो सरवाला जैसे पंजाब और दूसरे प्रांतों में बारात दूल्हे के साथ सरवाला जाता है, लेकिन वो सेहरा नहीं बांधता, लेकिन उसने सेहरा बांधा हुआ था। बारात में कुछ लोगों ने ब्लैक कपड़े पहने हुए थे, काले धागे पहने हुए थे, तो लड़की वालों को लगा कि यार ये क्या है, ये क्यों कर रहा है, लेकिन उन्होंने इग्नोर कर दिया, पूछा, उन्होंने जवाब नहीं दिया। उसके बाद जब फेरे होने का वक्त आया तो भजन कीर्तन हो रहे थे वहाँ, तो उन्होंने उनको बंद करा दिया लड़के की माँ ने। फटाफट फेरे करवाए तो उसके बाद लड़का बाथरूम गया, वो नहा के आ गया, सेहरा उतार दिया। ऐसा सो गया जैसे उसने कोई पवित्र कार्य नहीं, कोई अपवित्र कार्य करके आया हो। एनीवे, शादी वादी होगी उस टाइम 2001 का केस है ये। 30 लाख रुपए उन्होंने शादी में खर्च किया थे, लांसा कार दी। अब जब लड़की घर आई, ससुराल आई, तो उनके आंगन में एक आदम का मूर्ति बनी है। लड़की से कहा गया कि इसके साथ लड़की ये फेरेगा। लड़की ने सोचा कि ये इनका कोई कस्टम होगा, फेरे कराया गया, उस जयमाला भी डलवाई, वरमाला भी डलवाई उस मूर्ति का। उसके बाद जब लड़की से उन्होंने कहा कि आज से ये तेरा पति है, ये मूर्ति तुम्हारा पति है, तो वो सन्नाटे में आ गया। नया ससुराल में आई है, फंस के आई, उसके समझ में नहीं आया कुछ। उसके बाद शुरू हुई कहानी। अब लड़का जो है वो उसे अवॉइड करे, 3 महीने तक उसने लड़के ने उसके पास गया नहीं, जो उसका हस्बैंड था, टच नहीं किया। ऊपर से और की वो उसको भाभी माँ कहता था। अब जब कहानी खुली तो कहानी ये खुली कि जो आदमकद मूर्ति थी वो उस फैमिली के बड़े बेटे की थी। वो बड़ा बेटे ने कुछ किसी क्राइम में वो जेल में गया था, वहीं उसका मौत हो गई। उसके बाद उनके घर में कुछ ऐसी चीजें होने लगी, बिजनेस में घाटा हो गया, घर में लोग बीमार पड़ने लगे, कुछ ऐसी चीजें होने लगी। तो वो तांत्रिक के पास गए, जैसे हमारे समाज में होता है, समस्या के लिए डॉक्टर के पास नहीं, पहले तांत्रिक या उसके पास जाते हैं। तो उसने कह दिया कि वो उसकी आत्मा भटक रही है, वो सिर्फ सब करा दी हमारे बड़े बेटे की, आप अपने आंगन में उसकी मूर्ति बनाओ, उसकी पूजा करो, ठीक हो जाएगा। उन्होंने किया वैसा। अब तो संयोग ऐसा होता है कि 10 में से 2 मामले में हो जाते हैं। उनका जो गड़बड़ियां हो रही थी जो वो ठीक हो गई, उनको यकीन हो गया कि वो उस बेटी की आत्मा भटक रही थी, इसलिए ऐसा हुआ। लेकिन कुछ दिन बाद फिर वही शुरू हो गया। फिर वो तांत्रिक के पास गया, उसने कहा कि वो कुंवारा हो रहा था, उसके जो दमित इच्छाएं हैं वो तो रह गई, उसको पूरा करो, उसकी शादी करो। अब ये सारा जो साजिश रची गई थी, छोटे लड़के को पहले उन्होंने घर से बाहर भेजा, हरियाणा भेजा, उसको ये बताया कि ये प्रचारित किया अपने लोगों में जानने वालों को कि वो ऑस्ट्रेलिया चला गया है, वहां जॉब। ठीक है, रिश्ता कराया, वो लोग फंस गए, उन्होंने ज्यादा जांच पड़ताल की नहीं थी। बिचौलियों के जो बीच में जो मीडिएटर होते हैं उनके माध्यम से रिश्ता हुआ। अब लड़की को ले आए, आके मूर्ति की बीवी बना दी। अब बड़ी समस्या। और लड़का अपना ऑस्ट्रेलिया चला गया। ऑस्ट्रेलिया जाने के बहाने उसने ऑस्ट्रेलिया गया नहीं, वो एयरपोर्ट तक गया, तो वापस आ गया। उस बहाने उसने पैसे और लड़की की वापस ले ली। फिर तांत्रिक ने कहा कि शादी तो आपने कर दी, लड़की दुल्हन घर में भी आ भी गई है, लेकिन वो पीछे मिलन कहाँ होगा। तो अब उन्होंने क्या किया कि लड़की, एक जो लड़की पंखे से झूलती हुई डेड हुई 3 महीने, शादी के 3 महीने, वो तो उसका चुपचाप उसका अपना कर देते, अंतिम संस्कार करके उसको ये कहने वाले थे लोगों से कि वो अपने हस्बैंड के साथ ऑस्ट्रेलिया चली गई है। लेकिन किसी वेल विशर ने, लड़की के फादर के वेल विशर ने ये बात उनको फोन पर बता दी। उसके बाद फिर शुरू हुआ, तब पुलिस का रोल आया, तो तफ्तीश शुरू हुई। तो ये पता चला कि उस आत्मा से उसका मिलन कराने के लिए लड़की को मार दिया गया, ताकि वो ऊपर जाके उससे स्टैचू, जिसका स्टैचू था जो कहता अपना घोष, उससे वो मिलन कर सके। तो आज इस 21वीं शताब्दी में आप इस बात पे यकीन कर सकते हैं कि इस तरह से एक पूरा प्लान तरीके से आप एक लड़की की जिंदगी से कोई खेले। उसमें हुआ बाद में हम लोगों को सेशन से 7-7 साल की सजा हुई, लेकिन उसमें कुछ कॉम्प्लिकेशंस थे। तो ये कहानी तो है, कहानी बहुत सारे ऐसे केसेस हमारे यहाँ पे।
तो अभी वक्त कम रह गया है, तो फोटो सेक्शन के बारे में बात करते हैं। आपको आप आइडिया कैसे आया, आपने कॉन्सेप्ट कैसे डेवलप किया? और
मैं ईमानदारी से तो बात है कि यूरोप का कॉन्सेप्ट है, वहाँ 90s में बहुत सारी मैगजीन्स निकलती, तो एक पूरी स्टोरी होती थी 100 पेज की, 100 पेज की। लेकिन ये इंडिया में पॉसिबल था या नहीं था, इस पर होता। लेकिन सेबी ने एक बार स्टोरी रेप पर थी, सेबी मैगजीन होती थी, उसने इस तरह का एक प्रयोग किया। उससे हमारे दिमाग में आया कि ये तो हमारा सब्जेक्ट है। उसके बाद हमने इसको शुरू किया। शुरू में हमने इसको एक पूरा स्टोरी बोर्ड बना के हम पहले आर्टिस्ट से ड्रॉ करा लेते थे कि ये फ्रेम ऐसे होगा, ये ऐसे होगा, ऐसे होगा। पूरे ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट 1988 में हमने स्टार्ट किया, ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट में चलता हुआ। तो वो ये थोड़ा सा ये नया वो था क्योंकि टीवी हमें टक्कर दे रहा था हमारी मैगजीन के सर्वाइवल की लड़ाई थी उस टाइम। तो ये क्लिक कर गया। धीरे धीरे फिर हमने उसको जी। तो इसमें क्या है कि इसमें सारे एलिमेंट्स हैं। एक जो छोटी फिल्म के बनाने के लिए जितनी मेहनत करनी पड़ती है उतनी मेहनत इसमें भी करनी पड़ती है। उसके बाद फिर हमने ये कि इसको हम रियल क्राइम से जोड़ रहे हैं। तो मैंने वो ऐसी कहानी को सेलेक्ट करना शुरू किया जिसमें थोड़ा सा हम अपने पिक्चराइजेशन के हिसाब से थोड़ा सा लिबर्टी ले सकें, लेकिन उसको उसके फैक्ट ना हो, लेकिन रीडर के लिए मैसेज भी जाए। तो उसमें मैंने ज्यादातर चीटिंग के केसेस है जो जहाँ इमोशंस हैं, इमोशंस को जहाँ वो किया जाता है, एक्सप्लॉइट किया जाता है, उस तरह की कहानियों को मैंने इसमें कोशिश की कि उनको।
तो ये सारी स्टोरीज आप खुद ही लिखते हैं और इनकी स्टोरीज में मैसेज का बहुत बड़ा रोल होता है। तो हर एक स्टोरी में एक मैसेज होता है इनका रीडर्स के लिए। तो राहुल जी मैसेज के बारे में बात करेंगे।
मैं नहीं, इसमें मैं कोई कहानी वाली कुछ नहीं लिखता है। मेरे एक दो लाइन का एक कंसेप्ट मेरे दिमाग में होता है, मैं उसको पिक्चराइज कर लेता हूँ। मैं 1000 फोटो मैंने शूट कर लिए अलग उसमें से, जहाँ पर मुझे लगता है कि ये ऐसे डेवलप हो गया, ऐसे डेवलप हो गया। दूसरा के अपने आर्टिस्ट होंगे, जैसे सामने एक स्टोरी आ रही फौजी की, एक लड़की कैसे उसका पूरा परिवार इसलिए बर्बाद हो गया कि वो जो चीटर था उसने फौज की वर्दी में एक फोटो खिंचवा रखा था और उस लड़की को फौजी बहुत पसंद किया। तो वहां से उसका जो उसने ट्रैक पूरा शुरू किया। तो लास्ट में उसके भाई को भी किडनैप कर लिया और रैंसम भी लेके वो लड़की भी तो उसका सब कुछ चला गया। तो ये आप इतना भी किसी पर विश्वास मत कीजिए कि छोटी से उसके बाद उसको पूरा फेल कर लो। लेकिन होता है छोटे कसूर में जहाँ वहाँ लोग यकीन करते हैं, दुनिया विश्वास के सारे आगे बढ़ती है। ये इस तरह की कहानियां मैं इसलिए लेता हूँ ताकि हम लोगों को ये पता चले, दूसरे लोगों को भी इस तरह से किसी पर आसानी से विश्वास ना करें।
धोखे का एक एलिमेंट बहुत स्ट्रांग होता है, स्पेशली फोटो फिक्शन स्टोरी।
हाँ, मैं उसमें कोशिश ये करता हूँ कि जो सोसाइटी में जो चीजें हो रही हैं उनको पोर्ट्रे करूँ।
इसी सिलसिले में मैं ये भी पूछना चाहती थी कि जो सत्य कथाओं का पर्सपेक्टिव है उससे आपको लगता है कि लव एंड रिलेशनशिप कैसे चेंज हुआ है अभी सोसाइटी में?
नहीं, लव एंड रिलेशनशिप कोई चेंज नहीं हुआ। मैंने आपको बताया ना, मानसिकता वही है, आज भी वही है। जो ट्रेंड वो थोड़ा सा जो टेक्नोलॉजी आ गई वो चेंज हो गया, ठीक है। हाँ, थोड़ा सा ये हुआ कि जिंदगी आज बहुत फास्ट हो गई है, ठीक है। जो मॉरल वैल्यूज हैं उनकी लोग परवाह कम करते हैं। आज का जो यूथ है वो पहले ऐसा होता था कि किसी के साथ आप रिलेशन में है, अगर वो टूटता है तो उसको भी मजबूरी में टूट रहा है तो उसको भी दुख होता था, या किसी ने तोड़ लिया किसी बात के चलते, किसी वजह के चलते, तो उससे दुख होता था, वो कुछ दिन तो परेशान नहीं होता। लेकिन आज वो 2 घंटे परेशान रहेगा क्योंकि या तो उसके पास वक्त नहीं है, इतना बिजी है, या उसके पास विकल्प है, उसके इतने विकल्प मौजूद हैं कि वो बॉदर ही नहीं करता। और लव इन रिलेशन जो लिव इन में जो आजकल जो होता है, लिव इन में लोग रहते हैं, मेरा ये पर्सनली मानना है कि कोई भी टेक्नोलॉजी, कोई भी मशीन आपके जज्बात नहीं कर रहा है। वो आपको सुविधा दे सकती है, लेकिन वो प्यार की जज्बात जो यहाँ से पैदा होता है, यहाँ से पैदा होता है, वो इन्वॉल्वमेंट वो नहीं पैदा कर सकती है। और किसी को चेक करने के लिए, किसी को जानने के लिए 4 मीटिंग 4 दिन, या ऑस्ट्रेलिया बैठे या इंडिया बैठे हैं, फेसबुक से आप नहीं जान सकते। उसको जानने के लिए आपको बरसों लग जाते हैं कि वो अंदर से क्या है, वो बाहर से उसका मुकाबला भी हो सकता है। तो जो हमारे यहाँ जो पारंपरिक जो चीजें बनी है वो गलत नहीं बनी है, मेरा ऐसा मानना है। जो आजकल जो ज्यादा जो फ्रॉड होता है या जो इस तरह के लिविंग में मैक्सिमम जो फिर 90% जो मामले होते हैं वो अलग हो जाते हैं बाद में, उसमें ज्यादातर क्राइम में कन्वर्ट होते हैं, या फिर फेल हो जाते हैं, दोनों अलग हो जाते हैं। तो इसलिए मेरा ये कहना है कि आप सूरत तो मत जाइए, आप उसकी सीरत पर जाइए। किसी को परखने के लिए आप 2-4 मीटिंग नहीं होता है, आप उसके अंदर जाने के लिए आपको वक्त चाहिए होगा उसको समझने के लिए।
बस 5 मिनट रह गए हैं, तो हम ऑडियंस से क्वेश्चन आंसर्स के लिए ओपन करते हैं। सवाल?
I have a question. ये जो टेलीविजन में आजकल काफी क्राइम शोज होते हैं जिसमें ड्रामेटिक रिकंस्ट्रक्शन भी होता है, तो छोटे गाँव शहरों में टेलीविजन तो आ गई है, तो उससे कुछ फर्क पड़ा है आपकी लोकप्रियता में जो क्राइम है? और दूसरा ये मैं देख रही थी तो आपको ये मॉडल्स वगैरह कहाँ से मिलते हैं जो ये हिस्सा लेते हैं?
पहले मैं मॉडल्स को आता हूँ। मेरा एक अपना, मैं 25 साल से कर रहा हूँ, मेरा अपना एक मॉडल बैंक है। मेरे कुछ मॉडल्स हैं जो मेरे साथ जुड़ी है करना के लिए। बाकी मैं बीच में साल में 1 या 2 बार मैं बॉम्बे जाता हूँ। बॉम्बे में सिर्फ मैं 7 दिन ही काम करता हूँ, वहाँ मॉडल्स की जरूरत है। यहाँ से नॉर्थ से गई वो लड़कियाँ, लेकिन वो कहीं से भी काम करें, उनको रोटी के लिए काम करें। दिल्ली में यहाँ प्रोफेशनल मॉडल दिल्ली में थोड़ा कम है, ठीक है। कोई शौक के लिए करती हैं, और फिर जो हमारा ये है इसमें कभी थोड़ा सा एक्सपोजर भी होता है, उनकी सोसाइटी में ये स्वीकार नहीं होता है, ठीक है। वो उसको आदमी की पर्सनालिटी से जोड़ देते हैं, जो कैरेक्टर उसने किया है वो उसको पर्सनालिटी से जोड़ते हैं, उनके रिश्तेदार कहने लगते हैं ये क्या है, ये क्या है। तो मॉडल्स तो उनकी बात ये है। टेलीविजन क्या है मैडम, टेलीविजन क्या है कि टेलीविजन चैनल्स वाले थोड़ा सा जल्दबाज होते हैं। आज वो एक चीज को बताए, कल वो उसके अपोजिट, वो कंट्राडिक्टरी हो जाता है, वो दूसरी चीज निकल कर जाती है, उनको सबर नहीं है। कुछ टीआरपी की वजह से है या सबसे पहले दिखाने की वजह से। अब देखिए बहुत सारे केसेस होते हैं, आप इंद्रानी मुखर्जी वाला ये लीजिए, उसमें हर घंटे उनके वो बदल सब कुछ बदल। अब अभी तक भी रियल स्टोरी बहुत सारे केसेस हमारे यहाँ तो ऐसे बनते हैं जो एक सवाल छोड़ जाते हैं, उस सवाल को आप अपने तरीके से हल कीजिए। अब आरओसी वाला केस है, वो भी एक सवाल है। तुरंत आप उस तरह 1 साल से चल रहा है, वो भी एक सवाल है। बहुत सारे केसेस सवाल है। अब उसमें क्या है कि टेलीविजन वाले गहराई में नहीं जाते, तो मैं मानता हूँ वो सिर्फ अपना तुरंत दिखा दो, उसने दिखा के उसकी चलता कर दी, तो वो जो है वो अपने आप पे एक विश्वसनीयता हो रही है। तो हमारा पढ़ रहे थे देखता हूँ, कोई ऐसी बात नहीं, सारे टीवी पे देखता रहता हूँ। उसके बाद जो हमारी कहानी पढ़ रहा है, हमने उसको पकड़ के रखा हुआ अभी बोर्ड है वो हमारा, हमारी व्यक्ति में पढ़ता है, तो ये हमारी चीज है। उसकी वजह है कि हम उसको टोटल दिखाते हैं, एक पूरा एपिसोड दिखाते हैं, पढ़ाते हैं। तो इसलिए टेलीविजन से जैसा हमें लगता था कि बहुत बड़ा खतरा है टेलीविजन वाले, तो वो मेरे ख्याल से उनकी अपनी कमियां हैं या अपनी व्यावसायिक मजबूरियां हैं, उससे हमें बहुत फर्क नहीं पड़ता। जो जिसने हमारी कहानी पढ़नी है, एंजॉय करना कर।
आप जिस मुकाम पर आज पहुंचे हैं उसमें काफी लंबा अंतराल बीच में आगे है, तो शुरू में आपको इसमें क्या कठिनाई आई, क्या सोर्सेस थे आपके, क्या फीडबैक था उसमें?
मैं तो मैं ये कहूँ कि मैंने तो सोचा नहीं था कि मैं एक दिन क्राइम की दुनिया में जाऊंगा। एक संयोग ही था कि मैं इस लाइन में आया। शुरू में मैंने रिपोर्टिंग की, कहानियां लिखी है, क्योंकि मेरा थोड़ा सा, मैंने हिंदी से एमए किया था, हिस्ट्री से मैंने एमए किया, हिंदी मेरी थोड़ा अच्छी थी। मैं चीजों को दूसरे लेखकों की पर थोड़ा सा ज्यादा अच्छी तरह से लिख सकता था। मैं कल्पना ज्यादा थोड़ा अच्छी कर लेता था। उसके बाद मैंने जो अपने जो लीडरशिप बनाई है वो बनाई है, तो मैंने जो खुद इन्वेस्टिगेट की चीजें, मैंने होमर सर्कुलेटिव पर बहुत काम किया, मैंने जीएलओस पे काम किया, मैंने वाइफ सेटिंग वाले सब्जेक्ट को पढ़ा, मैंने ऐसे सब्जेक्ट अपने लीडरशिप लिए जो अनटचेबल हमारे समाज में माने जाते हैं। और क्लास स्टेज में मैंने बहुत काम किया। मैं बॉम्बे गया, मैं 15 दिन वहां रहा। मैंने बॉम्बे पर एक बहुत बड़ी कवरेज की 94 में, जो वहाँ के सारे रेड लाइट एरियाज, चाहे वो जूहू में हो, चाहे वो फिल्म के एक्स्ट्राज हो, या भिंडी बाजार में कमारटीपुरा में कांग्रेस हाउस में जो सड़क पर उस टाइम पूरा मेला वगैरह था, वो उनकी जिंदगी को मैंने पाठकों से रूबरू कराया। वहां से हमारे एक लीडरशिप बनी, स्पेशल लीडरशिप। एक टाइम मिला कि हमारा 50,000 एक पर्टिकुलर लीडर था जिसको हमारी मैगजीन पढ़नी ही पड़नी है, उसे खाना नहीं खाना, लेकिन वो 15 किलोमीटर साइकिल चला के आता था मैगजीन ले। तो वो हमने वो लीडरशिप पकड़ी, जिसमें एक मैगजीन को किराए पर लगा के इसको 20-20 लोग पढ़ते थे। अगर वो अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकता था, 2 रुपए को किराए पर लेकर मैगजीन पढ़ता था। तो हमने जो अलग अलग सब्जेक्ट जो, लेकिन वो ऐसे नहीं आया, उसके लिए मैंने कोशिश की, उनमें जाने की कोशिश की, उस सब्जेक्ट में जाने की कोशिश की। अपने आप को भी मैंने एक्सप्लोर किया, ऐसा नहीं कि मैंने अपने आप को एक्सप्लोर नहीं किया है। मैं जो वो गया तो अपने आप को भी एक्सप्लोर किया, वो चीजें मैंने लिखी, पाठक को बताई वो चीजें, तो वो पाठक को अपील कर गया।
आपने बोला कि जो सर्कुलेशन आपकी होती है, 50,000 आपके रीडर्स शायद हैं, परमानेंट रीडर्स होंगे, तो जो पूरी सर्कुलेशन है वो कितनी होगी और कैसे ये मैगजीन्स लोगों तक पहुंचते हैं? न्यूज स्टैंड से पहुंचती हैं कि सब्सक्राइबर बेस है आपका?
नहीं, हम सब्सक्राइबर्स बेस नहीं है, कुछ है, लेकिन वो जैसे प्राइमरी कैपिटल के कुछ विदेश के सब्सक्राइबर हैं, उनको भेजते हैं पूरा साल की चीज। इसमें हमारा जो है, हमारा पूरा नेटवर्क है, हर शहर में हमारे एजेंट्स हैं। एक तो व्हीलर्स कंपनी जो रेलवे स्टेशन में, उनके थ्रू डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होती है। हर शहर में हमारे अपने एजेंट हैं, तो छोटे कस्बे में हम बीपी से बाई पोस्ट उनको भेजते हैं, तो जहाँ रेल नहीं जाती है, बाकी सब रेलवे से जाता है। वो पूरा नेटवर्क है ऑलरेडी पूरा। और इवन हमारी मैगजीन अमेरिका में भी जाती है, इंग्लैंड में भी जाती है, और थ्रू बॉम्बे सारी के सारे देश में जाती है, क्योंकि वहाँ बहुत सारे इंडियन और पाकिस्तानी वो बहुत लाइक करते हैं।
और प्राइस क्या होती है आपकी मैगजीन की?
अभी हमारी जो हिंदी की मैगजीन है 40 रुपीज की है, हिंदी और इंग्लिश। दूसरी जो एक महानगर ब्रांड है वो 35 की है।
और बाहर तो ज्यादा
नहीं, वो एजेंट का जिम्मेदार होता है, आगे बेटा हमने एजेंट को दे दिया, इसका कमीशन है तो हो जाएगा। एक तो ये है, एक तो आपने सर्कुलेशन पूछा था, दूसरा ये डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन पूछा। सर्कुलेशन तो नॉर्मली क्या क्या प्रिंट मीडिया थोड़ा संकट में तो है, वो बात तो जो पहले हम एक टाइम था कि हमारी मैगजीन ब्लैक में चलती थी और हम उतना छाप नहीं पाते थे, जितनी डिमांड होती थी। आज वो स्थिति तो नहीं है, लेकिन चूंकि हम अभी अपने पाठक को, हमारे रीडर उसको हम सेटिस्फाई करते हैं, किसी भी तरह से कोशिश करते हैं कि हम उसके टेस्ट का मैटर दें, तो अभी हम वो कंट्रोल में है। जो बाकी प्रिंट मीडिया का जो हाल है उससे हम थोड़ा सा पर्टिकुलर होते हैं। हालांकि इस फील्ड की मैक्सिमम मैगजीनें बंद हो गई हैं, 20-25 मैगजीन बंद हो गई हैं, लेकिन हम थोड़ा सा अपनी मेहनत से, जैसे मैंने बताया मैं बॉम्बे जाके शूट करता हूँ, हम स्पेशल स्टोरी प्लान करते हैं, तो लोग कैसा कर सकते हैं, रीडर्स की बारी बुलाते हैं, कोई सजेशन ऐसा लेते हैं, हम रीडर्स से कहते हैं कि आप बताओ क्या आपकी क्या एक्सपीरियंस है, जैसे होमोसेक्सुअलिटी पर हमने किया, वाइल्ड सेक्सुअलिटी पर हमने किया, तो हम उसको रीडर को इन्वॉल्व करने की कोशिश करते हैं कि उसमें वो बताए वो क्या क्या है, तो फिर उस तरह से उसको स्टोरी बनाते हैं।
तो साल में कितनी निकालते हैं इश्यूज?
मंथली है,
मंथली। तो कोई सवाल?
सेशन क्लोज करते हैं। राहुल जी बहुत शुक्रिया, बहुत ही दिलचस्प बातचीत की। थैंक यू ऑल फॉर कमिंग। Thank you. That was again one of the more wonderful sessions. Once we settle down, we'll move into the next session. The next one again is a very, very interesting session. It's called A Crooked Cop in a Very Crooked City. Just give us 1 minute to set it up. Yes, so moving on to our next session, I would want to invite our panelists on stage. Can we have Jerry Pinto on stage? Mr. Phil Giorgio Pulishi, can we have you on stage? And among another of our panelists here, Clara Bnyama, she'll be joining us a little later. And introductions to this session will be facilitated by Alessandra Bottini. Ma'am, do we have you here?
Alessandra. My God.
Only he can get the nice pronunciations. Yes. He tried to teach me a lot of it. And I was like, no.
Okay, this is a flash. The Italian novelist has been kidnapped, and the Spanish novelist is following, trying to get her back.
And this could be the beginning of the plot of the crime story you could write in the Cops and Kings contest that is still going on. Thanks for the detail.
Yeah, but I'm not sensitive.
So are you going to do this all by yourself?
Yes, all by yourself. I mean, that'd be lovely.
Playing 4 different characters. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really pleased and proud to have Alessandra here, as well as the Italian authors on my left and Spanish authors on my right.
The session has started. We can all pay heed to Jerry.
So I'd like to ask the Spanish author first, Clara. They have played the Spanish authors.
How do you manage to be invisible?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good
That's the
question.
question.
How do you manage to be invisible? You see, it is a very good trick that I learned when I was in Scotland. Matters, but now, and shortly it will become, they'll be they're fashionably late. And you will see when they turn up, they look like a rom-com. Like you close them up after a rom-com. It watches people say, well, waiting.
And it's quite amazing.
Not Jerry, you need to interview yourself.
Correct, yeah.
What could be more interesting than this?
Just ask yourself questions and answer them.
Okay, here you
No,
go.
and I must say, we've had a Tarka of romance already to a clan festival.
Thank you.
Can you have a huge round of applause for our panelists now? Just creating the plot, setting up the scene. Over to you, Jerry and Alessandra. We've got something.
My God, you're big. There you are.
It was a late lunch,
Yeah.
and you went for siesta.
No.
Pronto.
I couldn't get in.
Alright. So, Alessandra, we're doing the introductions, Jerry.
Yeah,
So it's over to Papa first, and then we come to you.
And thank you. Thank you very much.
Over to you.
Allora, what is
Allora,
our friend?
so,
Our Spanish friend. What is our Spanish friend? Did you hear me?
She has been kidnapped and we were supposed to be chasing.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
cannot be. Thank you.
That's the crime
So,
test.
that's fine. Shall we go on? Shall we start anyway? So, I want just to say buenas tardes. Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Buon pomeriggio, and of course, good afternoon. A very warm welcome to all of you, and to the third session of the day 2 of the Hindustan Crime Writers Festival 2016. A cropped top in a very cropped city with Clara. She should be there.
Yes.
Mysteriously disappeared. We have Giorgio Pulici and Jerry Pinto. So, I want to say something about Clara, but I will start then with Giorgio. Giorgio was born in Cagliari, Sardinia, beautiful island, in 1982 and lives now in London. His first book is set in the city of New York, a New York that is struggling with a satanic sect. It is a part of the collective Sabotage, created by Massimo Carlotto, among one of the most prominent Italian crime writers. Giorgio is the author of The Saga of Biagio Mazzeo, a police detective.
It's all right.
We come back to you in shortly. So, Giorgio started this saga of Biagio Mazzeo with a bad history in 2012 that was nominated Best Noir on 2012 for a very important Italian blogs, and it won also a lot of prizes. Then followed by The Night of the Panthers, that this year translated into English very recently, and then Forever, the third book about Mazzeo. But he also published the psychological thriller that I really recommend you to read, The Appointment. And it was also, this book, considered the best thriller 2004 in the readers of several Italian blogs. I go back to Clara Peñalver, if I say this right. So, buenas tardes. Clara is a relatively new entry in the galaxy of crime fiction, of Spanish and European crime fiction. She was born also in a beautiful city, the beautiful city of Sevilla in Andalusia, a southwest region of Spain, and she studied at the University of Granada. And you know what she studied? Biology. So her first book was Sangre, Blood, of 2010, set in Granada, where she now lives. A city, apparently, where vampires feels easily at home, living and interacting freely and happily with us, non-vampires. Her interest on vampire was instigated apparently by his brother, so you must know something about this. Como matar a una ninfa, How to Kill a Nymph, and El Nuevo de los Cementerios, Playing in Cemeteries, are the first two books of the Bernarda Levi saga. The third book will come out very soon, I believe next month. Yes. And Clara is also now working and conducting in TV in workshop, creative workshop. And then, of course, I have to leave these two very dangerous people to the mighty hands of Jerry Pinto, a Mumbai boy who I guess does not need any presentation, being the columnist and the writer that we all know very well. But in his own description, he defined himself a poet. And that is interesting, you have to tell us what. His first novel, M and the Big Who, the Pinto Literary Prize in 2012. And in the second, Murder in Mahim, he joined the big family of criminals. I'm sorry, crime writers. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Okay, you see what I mean? That they look like a rom-com, no? And I saw them yesterday. I thought this was like the beginning of a romantic comedy. They meet in this city. Doesn't matter. She's part of it too. She looks like also part of the whole thing. Anyway, so this is great fun. I have just got hold of Pier Giorgio Puliz. I love saying names properly. Full. And I'm learning Spanish on Duolingo. So I said, tú eres idiota, you are late. Anyway, I thought what would be best because
they have said to me very bad thing in Spanish. Yeah?
I apologize. Sorry. You can say good now. Say something rude to me in Spanish.
I can say it in English.
Yes.
You foolish.
Well done. Order has been restored. We have insulted each other. When one of us is dead this evening, you'll have motive on both sides. Yeah? And she might kill me as well, the girlfriend, for having suggested the other rom-com. So there's a lot of motive that I've already given you. Okay, I thought a very good way to start this, since we have English translations of both their works present with us, is to ask them to read for 5 minutes each, so that you get a sense of what we are talking about when we start discussing their work, their processes, and what makes them crime writers. So, Clara, would you like to start?
Okay, if you don't say bad words, yes.
Sorry, problem.
The game of breakdowns. They say love only lasts 2 years. Dear God, how many novels must there be in the world that begin with this sentence? I'm guessing hundreds or thousands. I think this is why I feel so ridiculous. I didn't quite know why I was coming back to you. I looked you up in my cell's contacts, shrink, not wanting to acknowledge how I needed you again. I must admit that your advice helped me once. As a matter of fact, here I am, writing the story of my life. This time around, however, it's a lazy beginning. I'm mad at you. Well, okay, I'm mad at myself. Ugo is gone, and I come back to you with the same kind of faith with which one goes to a quake to get rid for words. Sorry. I come back to you to find refuge in your coffee shop therapy. This will be simple, Ada. I tell myself before, I tell you, you'll meet that with your psychologist. You'll enjoy a nice cup of coffee, and she will suggest you write down this episode of your life, because that is what she does, magic, and nothing else. How could I ever think it could be that simple? Worst of all, I think I might know why you haven't responded to my cry for help the same way you did the first time. I have tried to convince you that love only lasts 2 years because I had read it in a website of women until hormones do start. Was the detail of the article, and it was based on some scientific study. I think that it was Italian. I have stood in front of you on the edge of a depression with big purple bags under my eyes and a desperate need for your help. And, of course, I have tried to convince you that everything was all right, just a matter of 4 months, of 2 years. And then you have tussled me one more time. I tell you my problem, I tell you I need you. Well, okay. Truth be told, I try to convince you that I don't need you that too much. And you, instead of making it easy, you tell me that I'm not ready for your help. That I'm not ready. I don't do magic, Ella. You tell me I can only help you move on once you decide that you want to move on. And I get the feeling that you don't even know what your problem is. Now, let's do this. This is the beginning of the story because Ada is a private detective, a bit mad private detective that needs a lot of help. So while she's trying to discover who has killed a lot of boys, she is going to the psychologist for make her life a bit better. And if you let me, I want to read the end part of the first chapter that is nearest to the crime novel. We got back home around 8 o'clock in the evening that day after driving on narrow twisty roads for over 500 kilometers, from Seville to Granada via Córdoba and Jaén. Quite a ride, huh? Those hours tasted like glory and left me exhausted. We had dinner, cuddled a bit on the sofa, and went to bed. Ugo fell asleep instantly. But as much as I tried, I couldn't even flirt with Morpheus. I decided to get out of bed and turn on the computer to select some pictures and get ready for my next articles. As you know, I write articles of motorcycle tourists all over Spain for the Values magazine. I write about good twisty roads, magical landscapes, interesting destinations, or simply peculiar places where to have coffee. On that occasion, the topic was 12 months around cemeteries. I had had a blast doing the quatrains during my previous travels, and selecting the pictures brought back really good memories. Good memories and also a surprise, because I had barely spent 1 hour browsing the folders on my computer when I found something I thought I had seen before. It was a picture with a very particular tombstone. It was shiny green, with a little daisy bouquets on the corners and then inscriptions in silver letters. Where have you seen this before, Adam? I wondered out loud. I went back to the beginning and reopened every single folder I had just browsed. I went through the cemeteries in Extremadura, Andalusia, and Asturias, and I found it in Asturias. Had it not been because the tombstone around it were so different, I would have sworn the picture had been put in that folder by mistake. In that folder by mistake. They look identical. The granite, the daisies, the inscriptions, the words that gave me goosebumps when I read them aloud. The best smell is bread. The best savior, salt. The best love, that of children. Graham Greene.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. For me, it's really a pleasure to be here. And I want to thank you, especially Alessandra and all the Crime Festival staff, Mita in particular, and Clara for being here. It's really a privilege to be here, so thank you very much. I'm going to read you the first chapter of the book, this book called The Night of the Panthers. Just try to let you understand better. It's like, do you know the novel called The Godfather, or the movie? Yeah. It's more or less something like that, but set in a police environment. So the criminals actually are the cops, and vice versa. And it begins like this. The war had started. That was irreversibly fought. As soon as she saw the three corpses in the yard, racks in their mouth to stop them from screaming, and a bullet in the back of each man's neck. But there was something else that drew her attention. All three had their hands cut off. From the amount of blood on the floor, it was clear they had been cut off while the victims were still alive. A fairly explicit message: stop stealing from us. Do you have an idea what happened? Captain Anthony Weller asked this woman, who looked more like a model than a police officer. Of course she had an idea, because in spite of her deceptive appearance and her youth, Irena was a high-ranking officer in a national crime bureau. She had been sent especially from Rome to try to stop this war. Apparently, she had arrived too late. How many people know about this? She asked, ignoring her colleague's question. Only a few. The officers who got the call, me, and that's it. I thought of calling a forensic, as you said, as you asked. Good, because this is a very delicate matter. I must ask you to order your men to forget all about this homicide and not to talk about it with anyone, especially not reporters. The National Crime Bureau will take over from here, but it's a matter of national security. If this gets out to the media, we're all in deep shit, especially you and me. Very was about to reply when Irena's cell phone started ringing. He took advantage to go outside and tell his people to keep their mouths shut about the case and get ready to be counted. They have arrested Matteo, Irena said as soon as Vori came back into the hangar. What? He said in shock. They've arrested your protege, Biagio Matteo. I advise you to go to see what's happening. After a few moments of surprise, Vori obeyed, leaving her alone. Irena didn't pay much attention to the scene of the crime. She didn't know. She knew perfectly well who the victims were and would exceptional. On both sides, member of the Calabrian mafia, the Drangheta, the murdered man, emissaries from the south, the killers, hitmen from the north. All men of honor who belonged to the same organization, but with different ideas about how the business should be divided up, and who was in charge of who. She had all the information because one of the men on the ground was our informant. It was she who had persuaded him to come to the meeting, guaranteeing him for safety. Now he was dead, and she felt the weight of his pressing on her heart. You can allow yourself to feel guilty now, she told herself, because the hardest part was still to come, bringing her superiors up to date, admitting defeat. She dialed a number on her cell phone. Hello? My voice replied. It's me. I got here too late. It's already started. How many? 3. Their yarns were cut off and taken away. Shit. And your man? Gone. Damn. You have to stop them, she tell you. Now. She raised an eyebrow. There's one small problem. The man we choose, Matteo, precisely, just been arrested. Matteo. Yeah. He's at the headquarters right now, being questioned. Fuck. Think of something, but we need him. And we need him now. You have to stop them before it's too late. It may already be too late, she thought. Bury everything and get Matteo out. It won't be easy. Find a way and do it. They all say you're the best, don't they? Prove it. Irene Pichitelli rang off and stood there staring down at the corpse for a few moments. One of the officers she had brought with her from Rome called her over. The team's arriving, she said. Get rid of the bodies and clean out. I have to rush to the headquarters. But when you're finished, burn everything. She got it at a mark behind you and told the driver she was in a hurry. She knew perfectly well that if they didn't move fast, they wouldn't be dealing with 3 copies, but 300. Viaggio Mazzeo, she thought, and the cars speed out of the industrial zone. I really hope you are as good as they say you are.
Clara, I was thinking just now that if in a crime novel, the ultimate thing that you can do to somebody else is to kill them. In a vampire novel, the ultimate thing that you can do to someone is give them eternal life by biting them. Yeah? So actually when yesterday when you were talking about how you're not really a crime writer, is it just the dark side that attracts you? The dark side of human nature?
Yes, I feel, yesterday I said to him that for me the crime storyline is the perfect excuse to introduce in my novels a lot of things I enjoy a lot. For me, death is something always must be in my novels. Why? Because death in all the phases attacks to me a lot. So murders are an interesting phase of death that allow me to move the character from my novels for many ways. So while Ada is solving a crime, she's traveling by motorbike for Spain, or she's working when a friend of her needs her help in a bar, or she's helping a good friend to live her life alone without her husband who died 20 years ago. And this friend still is in love uh, with his husband. And with all these parallel stories, I enjoy um, um, making a lot of full of plot pages, full of violence pages, full of death pages, because these are the. I think this is the genre that permits me, that allow me to use the extremes of reality. The more sweet thing, and in the same page, the worst thing in the world. So this, yes, it is an excuse for me, the noir genre.
In the first paragraph of your novel, 3 people are dead. They have bled to death because 6 hands have been cut off and taken away. One person is already arrested, and the other investigating officer is obviously in the control of someone else that who is running her. So the first 3 pages of your novel are packed literally with kind of that dense action, and obviously you don't have time to investigate the general, sort of joys of the dark side. So how do you plan it like that? You say, let's see, like, how can I get that big, powerful punch in the first scene?
Got it. Yes, actually, the rhythm is very well, very fast paced. I mean, it's not only on the 3 pages. This is like actually the most lonely because things get messy actually. So Biagio Mazzeo is a police officer. It's like a detective chief inspector who is from a boat. So from the higher police officer. Is going to stop this kind of war between the mafia from the south and the new mafia from the north in Italy. So it's like being in the middle of this kind of a war in the underworld of crime. So yeah, the rhythm it's very cinematographic in a way. It's like actually a movie. It's also the language, the style. Must be, very, very fast, very speaking with images and dialogue, less description, so very, very fast. That's why I want to draw the reader directly, instantaneously, right away inside the story and never let him go.
I think it's interesting that you use the word cinematographic or because that tells cinema is generally an external medium. It can only capture what the face or the body allows of the spirit or the mind out onto the surfaces. But your work, Clara, seems to be, for instance, take that first line of your novel, love never lasts more than 2 years. This is already a line that is leading us into the person. You're going into the mind of the person. And almost everything, I suspect, from the tonality of the rest of what you read, is an investigation inwards, even as your heroine gets onto a motorbike and drives outwards.
Yes and no. I think the first person in the novel, it's when you pretend to write in first person, a novel, you find that the only view you have is the view of the main character. So the reader only can to know what the main character knows. And this was a thing that I didn't thought at first, and that gave me a lot of problems. But I think the way analyze the investigation, the criminal investigation, is is very out of her because she's always doing things. She explained to you all the scenarios where she work, all the things that she finds, and in a fast way. But if I want to, you as readers, go into the brain of Ada, I need Ada explain to you something. Yes, algunas cosas.
I think when you use that first person, you are allowed to do nuance and detail.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Whereas if you're using the third person, then it can only be she was angry. But if you're doing, like, for instance, I, and you say,
yes.
I felt a hint of anger, but I could also see in myself. And you can play with it a lot more.
Yes, if I have a serial killer, I can't pretend to explain to you how my serial killer thinks because I can't know it unless the serial killer tells her. But I don't like this way. I don't like the classic noir where you find all the explanation at the end of the book. No, I want the reader feel the same I feel when I'm writing. So I want the reader feel that and what was the reason for this? Why the killer did this? So I don't know how to explain the sensation, but it's like for me it's a bit difficult to explain how a serial killer has been doing a lot of bad things for a lot of years, and I want you as readers feel the same, and only giving you an open explanation, and you refill the rest.
So that's kind of like filling in the gaps, literally. You know, when the things that you leave for the reader to come into the book and participate in the storytelling, be part of the story. So I'm wondering, Pierre, yeah, I love, I think so. And Geronimo myself. Okay, so one of the things that one always hears about writing is that it's a solitary craft. That one, the writer is alone with his computer and he faces the wall of the blank page and now must take it over and inscribe it. How does it work to work in a collective?
It's a very different dimension. I mean, I used to write individually, and also I'm part of a collective. It's like more an experiment of a writing group. And actually, we are like now in 5, but we used to write also in 10 people. So, 10 minds to coordinate and to agree with. It's very a long process in a way, but very satisfying because you can immerse yourself in the point of view of other people. So this enrich the story, enrich the character. You can really go deeper in the depth of the characters. So it's very particular. It's not simple, I have to admit that, but it's a very particular and satisfying experience because the stories, all of us, all the writers, serve the story in a way. So you have to kill off your ego and doing the best for the story, so the best for the team. So no individuality, but the team and the story has to win. In order to do this, we stole the technique from the screenwriters. When we see a movie, actually that movie, more or less, is written by a lot of people, not just one screenwriter, but often like 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 and more. And the way to do it is like all group decide what to write about. So what the storyline will be, discuss each other what the story is about, which are the characters, describe the characters, and once everyone in the group has a clear view of the scenario, we can decide to write the plot. So we divided the plot in a point, in scenes actually, very detailed. And to each one of us, we give that scene. For example, I got the scene 1, the scene 3, and so on. Basically, and mostly, the scenes is related to the characters. So, for example, I got a detective, and I write all the scenes about that detective. Another one may write about a serial killer or something like that. When we finished, we put all together all the scene, and there's one figure inside of the group called the editor that actually copy and try to organize everything. Also, in a style meaning, so rewrite a little bit to try to have a solid story, very solid to go on. So that's the process more or less. It's not so easy, but it's very interesting.
And can you live in London and work with a collective that is in Italy?
Yeah, it's more complicated actually. When in the first process we have to meet each other in a room, otherwise it won't be. It can't be. Yeah, it cannot be. But once the first step is done, we can also Skype with your colleagues and stuff. And the last part of the process is to meet each other again in a room, see what we have done individually, and try to rebuild all the story together and uniformize also by the style and the writing.
Yesterday, Clara, when we were talking, you told me that you have color-coded characters in your books, that there are characters which have different colors. I'd like you to explore that a little because I was fascinated by that.
Well, my first point when I decided to write a new novel is to let born the characters. For example, with Adelaide Saga, I decided that I didn't want a blue or red color character. What does this mean? I think that most of characters of crime novels are red or blue. That means that red are very strong characters, very lineal, dominant, very extroverted characters with the truth always in the hand. For me, this character maybe because the kind of writer I am wasn't a great character for a crime novel. Blue characters are older characters, very gentle, obsessionated with the first step, and then the second step, and then the third step. Characters that needs to understand everything, and in a way so calm, so slowly. And I'm not in this way, and I wanted to be happy and to enjoy the writing of one novel. So I decided to create a yellow character, a disorder broken yellow character that could permit me to create a very unstable character. Ada is very positive. Spontaneous. He's very mad. It's a very difficult to break character. So for me, to have this kind of character in a crime novel where you can find blood and very hard scenes, very for me it was a reto, a very difficult thing to do, and I like difficult things. So I decided to build Ada like a yellow character, and when I had her, I decided to go to the street to know my character. So when I was having coffee, I was thinking, I'm sitting at a table, and the table is a bit chic. Yeah, okay, chic. How Ada feels with this situation? She supports it, or she stand up and look for another table, or if the streets is very full of people. Where is the place where Ada walk? The more full place, or the more empty. So for me, when I have a color character, like he has said, the most important thing is to know my character. So when a new character born, I go with him or with her or with them to the street, to at home, to the bed, and I try to think what they are thinking. It's a bit different way of telling.
Definitely. And I think we've got a 10-minute signal now, and I'd like to open it to questions quickly. But just one last question to Pietro, which is that, having dealt with the mafia, have there been any moments when you suddenly got a telephone call late in the night and said, "Hey, what are you doing writing about us?"
Why do you think I'm in Italian and I live in London?
No long distance phone calls.
To be more safe, yeah. But actually, you can be safe in any part of the world, because the Italian mafia, the Calabrian mafia, actually are
Oops, there they are.
everywhere. Yeah, trying to tamper this mic as well. No, really, they are really everything, because where there's money, there's mafia everywhere. And they are very, like 30 years ago, 10 years ago, they are like more, they are growing as the business, as the economy is growing. So they are not like, they don't kill anymore so often as they used to be. Because if you kill someone, you capture attention, the attention of the police. So they are very smart about this. They don't kill in Italy. If they have to kill, they kill maybe in India or in Mexico.
That is very reassuring.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's very creepy, because they really are everywhere. Where's there's money, there's mafia. They follow the business more than businessmen. They are graduated in the most prestigious university abroad, not in Italy. They invested their money of money laundering not in Italy, but in the new continents where the economy is very good. China, for example, India, USA, Australia, everywhere. For example, just a little example, there are more family on Drangheta in Germany now than in the Calabria, that is the county in Italy where they are. So it's like the globalization of the mafia now. It's like in every continent now. So it's very creepy this, and it's also very hard to fight this for the police officer, for the judges, because in the other countries sometimes police officers and judges, they don't know what they are dealing with. They are not so used to organized crime. They don't have like a organized crime squad to fight this phenomenon. So it's very hard to do it, to fight. And I guess that books and movies about that are very important because they are let grow the awareness on the people, on the viewer, on the readers about this problem. So it's better known, and you can also understand from some signals what the problem is, what the mafia is. If that restaurant is like actually a money launderer, if that hotel is financed by the mob, by the criminals, and so on.
Okay, I'm opening up for. We have 5 minutes now, so a couple of questions. The gentleman in the front, sir. Please keep your question brief and address it to one of the panelists.
Sure, address to the last speaker. So this is the reference to your last point, the globalization of the mafia. And of course, there are now serials like Lilyhammer, which actually depict the globalization of the American mafia to a great extent. I was wondering whether also there's some stereotypification entering into the portrayal of the mafia, which makes it more challenging for you as an Italian writer, especially since Mario Puzo did his bit. So for you, what problems did you face? I'm reminded also sort of very different treatment of crime in, say, Camillare's work. And Montalbano is a very atypical sort of figure, quite different from the usual detective. So,
thank you. How do you deal with stereotypification?
Actually, it's very difficult because the world now is not like it used to be before. There's no black and white. You can reveal that the criminal is not like wearing some guns or holding some guns and stuff, or some fist on the air, or some mask. Actually, now more criminals, a lot of them, they are wearing a suit. They are in the bank, not in the street. They are in the office. They are lawyers. They are judges, and so on. So it's very hard to identify them. And the way Camilleri does is different. It's like the old way. The cop is always good and the criminal is always bad. In Italy now and in the world, actually, the two things are mixed each other. So you can't really identify and distinguish black from white. It's not like a lot way of gray. Like it's so gray actually. And you have to be very careful, to be very smart to see the signals that.
Okay,
let's see
I'll take the second question.
So when you write about dark characters in first person, does it not scare you that you go too deep into it and you might, a lot of famous actors have also died trying to portray really dark characters. So does it sometimes affect you too much, and if yes, then how do you deal with it, the darker side of matter?
Are you asking to me that if the first person writes an text to me?
When you speak with characters, do you feel sad?
No. Yes. I understand you. I understood you. Yes. The third novel of Ada has been a very hard novel for me because she has to look for a cadaver that has disappeared in a cemetery in Granada, while she's taking care about her very best friend who is very, very ill with cancer. So I want Tirana had depression in the first middle of the book, but not saying directly. And when I have written about 100 pages, I began to feel myself very depressed because I spent 8, 10 hours a day writing, maybe more. And those hours, Anna and me, is the same. And when I realized this, I felt, oh, I have to give myself 2 days for a rest, and then I follow. So yes, it's a bit it's like Russian mountain.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad this is over. I thought that you very dangerous thing to deal with two writers from two different countries and two different languages. But I think we had a great time. Thank you so much. I apologize for any offense scores. Thank you very much. And go out and buy the books.
So this session started with action, ended with action. Wonderful. Yes, that's like perfect thriller setting. Thank you so much. Yes, you may all break for tea, which you already have. See you around in another 15 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, we can take our picture. Let's go. You're staying too. Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. That's lovely.
That's what you want. You want that is very good.
No, pero está bien, me queda muy bien. Y saca un par de fotos si quieres se las envío por correo. Ya me das tu mail y te envío.
Sí, por favor, ¿dónde está?
Ahí, aquí.
No, I can understand. One more dangerous things, but you know, it's in a more general way. So they don't know you're writing about them, or yeah. Exactly. You're not focusing on one thing. They're looking and because he's underground. They don't kill you. You have all his numbers. You have all his numbers.
Quick learning.
Very good. You said nicely. You know what you said to us?
I just said you're a fool. This is very mild. But this is 4:30 will be the time. For this thing. So she came here thinking that she was in there. And he told her it's India, it will be late. The Spanish director or whatever.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
To get the whole thing. And then
just get someone to read for him. If no one understood either of them, this is like a nice racy Wow, that's the same. When you read one word, Yeah.